All right, welcome, my friends, to this first episode of a short series. So, as promised, I want to go over building out the product, which partially we've been doing most of the time inside of the actual curriculum itself. So, I want to go over everything that we haven't touched on already, just so things don't get repetitive. Now, the this is what we're going to go over in this video, just to have things spaced out. But the first thing is pre-sale. So the first 2 weeks when I decided to actually launch or launch pre-sale and then go through these. So the first thing here is the marketing strategy. I talked about this in one of the calls that I will link to for the actual master's curriculum itself, where I went over the landing page, because we talked about the marketing strategy, right? Everyone should have this written down. And then we talked about the landing page copy. So kind of transferring that over, how to actually include things, what you should include, the unique mechanism. And this is pretty much the entire landing page structure. The only difference is that you need to take what you wrote here, put it onto an actual landing page and make it look good, right? Because you could just write a Google Doc. You could just like post this on the internet and try to sell it, but it always works if it looks good. So the main thing here is that like this is how it's spaced out, right? And I've done web design before. I'm fairly well read on everything pertaining to that. But what I use here is Card. So card.co, I've listed that a few times, but card.co, it's like pretty simple to start. It's not that much money, right? Where it should give you the pricing somewhere, but yeah, Pro Plus is 55 to start and then 89 a year. So that's not bad at all. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to use Components UI, which is the template that I use. So you can download this and you pretty much just get template packs that you can like fill in the blanks, change the colors, change the fonts, move it to fit, I guess. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't go too crazy with it at the start, because like I've been doing this for a while. Mine looks good. It's not the best design in the world, but it looks better than most will be at the start. And you don't need something this crazy at the beginning. If the design is the thing that's holding you back from launching, that's a bad sign. And I would just say launch on Gumroad without a landing page and you'll be fine. Trust me, you can iterate from there. But the next thing that we're touching on is, so creating the product. We're going to talk about how I actually built it out in the next video, but creating the product and starting the actual promotion. So the first thing that I'm going to run through are my backlog newsletters and how this worked, right? So we're going to be talking about these two because I wanted to do a test. I wanted to see if what I said at the beginning of Bachelor's is actually correct, because I talk about that if you want to sell something, you need to build authority in that space. That means you need to talk about your money-making interest more and more leading up to the launch. So here I literally wrote about writing and the importance of it, and you can read through this post if you want and how I structured it. But this post about writing outsold this post by so much, even though this was closer to launch. Right? This still sold some copies because in the actual post and newsletter, remember I send these out as newsletters before I upload them to the blog, but like I included little call to actions here. I included it at the end where my new course, 2-Hour Writer, is off to a great pre-sale. It launches on the 27th, blah, blah, blah. But I think we were around like 200 or so sales around here. I am not entirely sure, but things definitely pick up as we get closer to launch. So just to like spill the beans of what happened during launch week is there was an 80,000, so it was an $80,000 launch, right? I was hoping for $100,000, but I didn't reach out to too many people to help. This was mostly just me and my audience. Well, I don't know what I'm doing. But like, as I said in the actual launch strategy, if you leverage people's audiences and get them to hype it up, then you have more than just your audience, right? So what happened is what I mainly did during this time is just shift my focus in the newsletters, right? When you have the content ecosystem rolling and you have weekly newsletters going out, you turn those into threads, you talk about those ideas throughout the week, then all you have to do when it comes time to promote something is change the topic that you're talking about, right? So in my case, rather than talking about some philosophical concept and not really giving any value, I just had to switch to writing, right? And build my authority, which happens much, much, much easier and faster with long form content. And like this, pretty much announcing that I launched the product, that is what brought in a ton of sales and started getting people talking about writing. It's what built my authority in writing. I noticed people tweeting at me where they're calling me like the OG writer. And it's like, I've never even talked about writing before. So who knows, right? So that's what I did. I started 3 weeks out from my launch date. I set a launch date. I set a price. I got the actual landing page built. And then 3 weeks before I launched this, right? So on August 13th, I sent out this newsletter, and then I uploaded it to my blog, and that plugged the course and said that it was launched. So I'll show you the little call to action where it said before this, it said the 2-hour writer is on pre-sale. I updated it, but again, you can like go and look through these and reverse engineer exactly what I did while promoting this course, right? So I put it as a newsletter. And then the next thing I did that I want you to see is that I started here. So I wasn't talking too much about writing like anywhere here, really not at all. And then right here, I promote my newsletter this way, and this made a good amount of sales. I don't really track how many sales each newsletter makes, but this made a good amount of sales in and of itself. And considering that I also post this on my Instagram stories, I literally just screenshot this, post it on my Instagram stories. I copy, paste this to LinkedIn. And then from there, I keep talking about it, right? So I have like varied content where I'm not only talking about writing. So I space it out, but my intention was to include at least one tweet a day for the week, looking over this and coming up with a tweet where I would be able to plug this so I can send more traffic to it, right? So writing is how you gain clarity. You can see that I'm starting to write and show my authority about writing in a way that's engaging and will get followers and retweets either way. And then I plug the newsletter that's related to it, and this gets 10 times more engagement than actual promotions themselves, right? So people will read through this, go down and buy the course. And so let's keep looking. Didn't talk about writing, and then the next day, the most powerful daily habit you can form, writing. And then I plugged it again, right? So you can see what I'm doing here with the content ecosystem where people are going here and pre-ordering the course. And then just continuing going on. And then I put out a thread that was the previous newsletter because they're kind of staggered, right? So it was this one. This was the newsletter that I turned into a thread. And then we keep going. Well, I didn't plug it under that one. So I plugged this and I added a link to the course in this just so I would make some sales. And then keep going. And then I wrote this thread. Oh, so things were a bit messed up in my schedule. So I ended up writing 2 threads, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday. So this thread was on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, I launched this thread and it actually did extremely well because my hook was very authoritative. It got people talking. thankfully no one said anything negative, because sometimes people do when you state your income, and it's like, what can you do? But I turned it into a thread. If you want to go find this and just look through it and see what it says. If you don't have Twemex already, you can just go to my profile and then say like the average writer, and then you can find it there, look through it, see how I wrote it, and see how I actually plugged it. And then we keep going. You can see that I plugged it in the actual thread right there. Let's see how many clicks this got. 503 link clicks. So at this time, at the very beginning so closer to the actual launch date, conversion rate got as high as 8%. And here, conversion rate, like 2 weeks out, conversion rate was averaging about 6%, which is still extremely above average. So I'm telling you, like, that this system works with writing the newsletters and not really having any fancy sales stuff or being pushy or selling some kind of, like, I honestly am starting to believe that that like you don't need a side hustle product or anything else. Like, it can be a product that increases the opportunities in people's personal and professional lives, and your ability to create an argument for that will determine. So let's see, from this plug alone in the thread, from the newsletter, from this alone, 503 link clicks. So 503 times 0.06 for 6% conversion rate. So that's 30 sales. So 30 times, it was on pre-sale for 95. That's 28.50. So not bad, but then you also have to consider how many people went to the actual post that I plugged at the end. So let's see, where did I plug that? Let's find it. Yeah, right here. So let's see how many this has. 557. So then if that gets more clicks from the actual blog itself, that's more sales, not to mention people going to my link in the bio, my website, and then this being distributed on Instagram and LinkedIn as well, getting more clicks that way. So like, if you want to look through Kartra, which I'll show you closer to the last video, and go through each and every like week in the sales, it was like a consistent $3,000 to $6,000 days, back to back to back to back. And then the last day, as I've mentioned, like the last day closing into the actual launch is where you're going to make the most sales. I believe that was a $30,000 day from just having this system in place and being consistent with it over time, right? And so here I started writing more about writing, posted a video, and then I'm not even changing too much. I'm just changing the topics. Now, if I wanted to make more sales, I could have wrote about writing again, maybe 10 writing tips that I wish I knew, right? And I would have made a lot more sales, but I wanted to do the test. I wanted to write about this, and this didn't make as many sales. It made maybe half the sales as the other actual article. So it just goes to show that if you do want to sell something, you have to talk about it. You have to talk about that topic more. That doesn't mean you have to talk about it all the time. It only talks about it. It means you have to talk about it at the times that you want to promote, and when you're leading up to a launch. And I don't know, it's just good to have in your rotation. You can consistently plug old newsletters that made the most sales, right? So you can see here, so this is August 22nd. Yeah, so this is still leading up to, well, this is the last week of launch. So we'll go over this now, and then we can save the last one for all the big stuff. But I kept writing about writing, right? So it's as simple as write a good tweet about the topic that you're trying to promote with. And then closing in that last week, moving up to launch, is when I started actually promoting the course itself rather than the blog post. Now, I could have kept plugging the blog post, but I wanted to make everyone aware, whether they're on my newsletter, whether they read my blog, whatever it is. I wanted to make them well aware that I'm launching a course and that I'm not only plugging a blog, because some people don't make it to the bottom. So the last week leading up to the actual launch of the product, I started plugging the actual course under my posts that were about writing. You see? And then here, okay, so here's a great example of you not even having to write about certain things. Your transitions have to be good, right? So read this. Most people don't get what they want because they aren't strategic. They focus on two things: where they are now, where they want to be, instead of creating a clear path between the two. This inevitably leads to overwhelm, procrastination, and unhappiness. This has nothing to do with writing at all, right? And so the transition that actually got pretty good engagement is I talk about them like creating a clear path between point A and point B, or 1 and 2. So I said point A, knowing the potential the internet presents for doing what you want, building a better life, and making a creative income. Point B, 2 to 4 hour work days, fulfilling projects, and digital leverage. The path. I thought I was pretty clever with that one. So let's see. I didn't even get that many clicks. But still, it's like product awareness, right? You're making people aware of the product. Remember, levels of awareness. So moving up, we plugged it a bit more. And then this is where I started getting like really nitty gritty and started talking about the product itself and how I write content. And then let's see. I didn't delete the thread. Oh, okay. So this was my launch thread, right? And this is what I sent to everyone on that day. We'll go over this in the last video and how I kind of executed on this. But the last thing I want you to understand is that both on Instagram and LinkedIn, let's see. So this is when I started actually talking about writing on LinkedIn. Oh no, so it was right here, right? This is how I promote my newsletters. Is I take the graphic from the actual newsletter, I find some tweets relating to writing. Why is that in there? That's a bad tweet to have in there, whatever. But then I have the caption where I talk about writing. And then I say, the co-letter just dropped. I didn't even talk about the actual product here. I just sent them straight to the newsletter, right? And so what I'm doing is I'm pretty much doing the exact same thing that I did on Twitter, just I'm doing it on Instagram. It's just a bit staggered, right? And then what happens is, do I start promoting it here yet? Yeah, so I'm still just going with the motions on Instagram as I started promoting this newsletter more on Twitter, because you also have to take into account that I screenshot all of my tweets every day. I screenshot, like, let's say I posted these 3 tweets in a day. I screenshot it and I post it to my story. So that means if I plug something under a tweet, then I also post that to my story with a link to that plug, right? And so going back to this, posted that one, and then I posted this as a thread. So this is the thread that I wrote, but just condensed as I talk about in the actual curriculum itself. And so at the end of this is when I start promoting the course leading up to the launch. I remember this guy, I had to go off on him in my stories, but that was like the only negative comment I've gotten throughout this entire launch. So it wasn't bad as a whole, but then you can see here, I'm still just following my own theme. None of these really talk about writing, but then getting closer to the actual launch, this is like I started talking about writing. So I looked up my writing tweets, included them in a carousel. They're all about writing. And then in the caption towards the bottom, I talk about, I transition into a pitch for the actual 2-hour writer, and it worked perfectly fine. And I'm sure that got some sales. I don't really track, but we had a good launch overall. And then taking LinkedIn into account, I don't really need to go over that, but I posted the same thing on LinkedIn as I did on Twitter, and condensed the thread into a LinkedIn post, plugged it, and promoted just as I did on Twitter. Like if I promoted on Twitter, that was a reminder for me to go and promote on Instagram and promote on LinkedIn, right? And then since I turned my newsletters into YouTube videos, they're a bit staggered. They're like 2 weeks out. So the writing one got put out 2 weeks after I actually started promoting. So I don't have YouTube locked down yet. I'm kind of just building on there for now. But that is so far promoting. And we talked about that as well. So that's kind of it for this video. I hope that was helpful. We'll go over actually building out what's in the course. It's fairly simple. I just want to talk about my thought process behind actually creating the Notion system for the course and writing out some of the curriculum. And yeah, I think that should be helpful. And then we can go over the actual launch day and what happened then. Cool.